Every one of us have been influenced in some way or another by somebody who coached us. It may not have been a formal coach. It may have been your parents. It may have been a friend. But we've been influenced by our coaching. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, I am a coach. When I retired from government 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago now, I knew that one of the major diseases in the world was retirement, so I had to avoid that. They said, what are you going to do? I'm a coach. And I just said, I'm a personal coach for greatness. And I started coaching people and helping them with their time management, their goal setting. Gee, all the things that I did when I was in sport coaching, I applied to the business field. Oh, another reason I said I was a coach. Many of my friends, when they retired from government, called themselves the big C. Consultants. And I would always ask them, I said, does your wife work? They would always say, yes. I made a correlation. If you wanted to be called a consultant, your wife had to work. My wife was a school teacher and been retired for a good number of years, and I couldn't get her to go back to work, so I could not be called a consultant. Then I started to reflect. How is it that I've been in this coaching field? And by the way, I didn't know there was such a profession at the time until one of my clients came to me a few years after I'd been in. And he said, here's an article, Vic, all about this new field called personal coaching that you're in. I went, wow. So I went to the first coaching conference in Houston, Texas, and they're all there, all these people that are in this personal coaching. They said, well, how did you get started? I just started. What? You didn't go through Coach U or International Coach this or certify that? No, just started. And why did I just start? Because I've been doing this all my life. And I started to reflect. It started with my family. My mother coached me in badminton. My father tried to coach me in soccer, and he did coach me, though, in gymnastics, and teach me to walk on my hands, of all things. And in my early days, I became a softball coach at 16. My father was the manager, and I coached a boys' softball team, 12 and under. We won the provincial championship. I also coached my brother in badminton, my sister in badminton. When we were younger, when I was 15, 16, 17, my brother became the top junior badminton player in Canada. Big influence, my family. But what was interesting is, every time we'd be taking up some new sport or something, my dad would always get books. We'd have books on badminton, books on softball, and then arguments around what was the best way to coach. And we'd go to the books. Mr. Murphy had a big influence on my life too. Our gymnastic PE, itinerant PE coach. And I went, wow, I'd love to be a PE teacher someday. Big influence. When I joined the Air Force, I became a coach, coached various teams. But the biggest influence was when I met my wife. She became the yin and the yang because I was jock, she was music. She was a terrible badminton player, and I was the best badminton player in Holberg on our Air Force station. So they put people together for this tournament, for the base tournament. They had to put the best player with the worst player. Yeah. My wife and I met. She wasn't my wife then, but we met. Well, I pressed so hard to make sure she learned badminton. And the luckiest thing in the world was, because it was a radar station and people were on shift work, this tournament took several months. I had time to make sure she was a good badminton player. We ended up winning the tournament. She was my coach because after I got out of the Air Force, she coached me to help complete my university training to be a school teacher. She was a school teacher. I was so incredibly fortunate, and then she became the coach in our family. I did the sports stuff. She made sure that all of our kids learned music. She was an exceptional golfer, though, as well. Les Heron came up to me when I was watching a girls' volleyball game at Eric Hammer Secondary School. And he said, "Are you Vic Lindal?" Oh, well, yes. And he said, "How come you don't have a boys' team at Eric Hammer?" I go, "Well, there's no boys' league." He said, "Well, you can have a boys' team, and they could play in the Senior B Men's League, and you could play in it too." Oh, wow. We put a notice in the bulletin. The next thing you know, we had 18 guys show up the next day. We created a volleyball team, and from there, I eventually became Canada's national women's volleyball coach because of the inspiration from Les Heron, who, by the way, happened to be a custodian at one of the elementary schools and had learned volleyball, but he wanted to see it thrive at Eric Hammer. Out of all of this, the thing that I learned is if you want to be great, you need to surround yourself with great people. One of the quotes that I often give my clients, you are the average of the 5 people you most hang with. I was fortunate in all of my coaching experience to be hanging with world-class people. Then as I got into the volleyball coaching, I decided I wanted to get even better. So we brought in the U.S. national coach to be the head clinician at our volleyball camp. And from him, I learned even more. I managed to travel to Japan to study under the Olympic gold medalist from the 72 Olympics. The key that I learned is that if you want to be great, you need to surround yourself with great people. And as Napoleon Hill says in his book, Think and Grow Rich, have a mastermind alliance. That means people that you can bounce things off. I became very fortunate as a coach to have world-class people to contact and learn from everywhere, including last week where one of my former clients has a fitness center in Tampa. That's who Vic Lindal is, and Vic Lindal will continue to be a coach.